All right, guys, welcome into this special Monday night edition of Talkin' Ball. We're going to call this Talkin' Recruiting. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. Have a little patience with us this afternoon. I'm going to be taking all you guys' questions tonight, just talking recruiting, man. Obviously, big day for the Texas Longhorns for Steve Sarkisian with Dia Bell, 2026 quarterback from American Heritage in Plantation, Florida, committing to the Texas Longhorns. That is a huge win for Texas. Obviously, potential five-star quarterback. Some people have him rated five-star. Some people have him rated four-star. See where it all kind of ends up. This is well before his junior season starts, or a couple of months before his junior season starts. So a lot of games to be played, a lot of tape out there. But Diabell's in the mix for the top quarterbacks in the country in 2026. But this is a big win for Steve Sarkisian and staff because, look, it's Broward County. We're watching Dia Bell here. To me, makes this a big win. Yes, Dia Bell's a big-time quarterback. Yes, he has the bloodlines. Obviously, father Rajah Bell played in the NBA a long time, was a star at FIU. His mom was a soccer star at FIU. He has a little brother. I think it's going to be a really good hooper, by the way. Dia was also a really good hooper before really focusing on football. Dia, for those that don't know, averaged about 21 points a game as a freshman on varsity at American Heritage. 5 rebounds, 5 assists. Really, as you would expect, knows how to play the game of basketball. Went football focused. But getting a quarterback, a marquee player out of Broward County, I think that's big. I mean, yes, Michael Kern, the punter, came out of Broward, St. Thomas Aquinas last year, and will be competing for that job here this season. But Dia Bell, top-ranked kid, quarterback, top-ranked prospect out of that South Florida area, Dayton, Broward. That's tougher areas for the University of Texas. But with the move to the SEC, I think, again, that shows the reach of Steve Sarkisian at the quarterback position and this Texas program moving into the SEC. It was so interesting when I went down to American Heritage in mid-May, and I watched the practice at American Heritage, watched Dia Bell, sat down with him for an interview, which is on Texas football in the archives. You know, there's a lot of chatter at the time. I love that little whip right there to the outside in the quick game. Love his feet in the pocket, by the way. But a lot of people are talking about Penn State and LSU being the teams to beat. But when I was down there and I talked to Dia, he said, I have one visit scheduled, and that was Texas June 1st. I said, what else? Nothing else right now. Now, he went on and scheduled 3 visits, but at the time when I left there, I was like, hold on, that doesn't really match up with kind of the reports that Penn State and LSU were leading for Dia Bell, because he had been to Austin in mid-March with his father. Texas offered him then. Obviously, he had become a top target of Texas. Him, Troy Hune, Jack Curtis, who committed to Georgia. Those are pretty much the 3 quarterbacks. So it really came down to Dia Bell and Troy. And you could tell that Texas had really liked Dia Bell a lot. But I could tell leaving that day at American Heritage that Texas was much more in contention, I think people thought originally, for Dia Bell. And then obviously FSU with the late offer in May, and then he scheduled that visit camp date June 9th. It made me wonder, okay, is FSU actually the competition for Texas? Because that's a late offer and an immediate camp visit to throw for Mike Norvell and the staff. But then he went to Ohio State, then he went to LSU, and he commits to Texas today. Big-time pickup. I just love that Texas is spending more time in the state of Florida. I know this is quarterback, and this is kind of a specialty recruit in Broward County for Texas, but I just love the more resources, and that means time spent, feet on the ground, recruiting the state of Florida, because I do think kids in Florida have interest in Texas and will come visit the University of Texas. And getting Dia Bell certainly does not hurt Texas' cause in the state of Florida. I also think this commitment is going to go over big nationally for Texas, especially in the Southeast region. Popular kid, great personality. I had a great conversation with him. Again, you can find that. But Dia Bell, he's a wonderful kid. He's got a little something to him, if you know what I mean, that I think makes him attractive to other prospects. He knows how to talk to those guys. He's got some leadership. He's got a little something to him, a little moxie to him that really impressed me in person. So Dia Bell, big pickup for the Texas Longhorns. Like I said, this is your talking ball Longhorn live stream recruiting for Monday night. Thought it'd be great to just come in, answer a bunch of questions for you guys. So much going on. Texas had 16 official visitors over the weekend. 3 midweeks coming in this week. Another 16, 17, 18 guys coming in next weekend. So 7 the first weekend. It's over 40 official visitors. We have a number of guys that are going to be announcing here in late June, early July, most of them in July. We'll get to some of those guys. And again, I'm going to answer all you guys' questions. But before we get going, I do want to take a couple of minutes here for the sponsor of Talkin' Ball in this Longhorn live stream tonight. That is John Donovan, the president of Longhorn Wealth Management Group. John is a proud Texas Exes Life member whose wife and all 6 siblings are also University of Texas graduates. This explains why John has branded his firm Longhorn Wealth and has dedicated his firm to providing total wealth management for Texas alumni, employees, family, and friends. John is a certified financial planner with over 30 years of experience and wants to offer every OTF member and fan a free 90-minute consultation on how to explore how Longhorn Wealth can help you and your families maximize your wealth, minimize your taxes, and secure your own financial future and legacy. So to schedule your own 90-minute free consultation, simply call Longhorn Wealth Team at 972-707-4900 or schedule an appointment online at www.longhornwealth.net. Lastly, Longhorn Wealth is wishing good luck to all our current and former Longhorns who are competing in the U.S. Olympic trials for the right to represent USA in the Summer Olympics in France in July and August, and hook 'em. All right, guys, thank you very much for joining in. Numbers are growing fast. I'm just going to start getting to you guys' questions. I think that's the best thing I can do is get to questions, and we will answer as many of those as I can tonight. Let's see. Let me go up at the top here. Let's start at the top. We had some questions at like 4:45 when I think some people thought we were regularly coming on. We changed that time. So we will do that. Here's a good one. Let's start with this, Daniel. Is there a real shot with Jamie French, 5-star receiver out of Jacksonville Mandarin? If so, what do you think his strategy is with the flipping of the top teams, if there is one? I think Texas has a very legitimate shot at Jamie French. He'll be in Austin this weekend for an official visit. He was at Tennessee. He was at Miami. He was at LSU, those 4 schools. He has a late August decision coming August 30th. When I was by the school in mid-May, I thought Texas was in a pretty good spot for him at the time. LSU was the competition for Texas. They were the top 2 with Miami and Tennessee right there, and Ohio State maybe on the peripheral at that time. I do think that Tennessee may be a player in this more than given credit for, but we'll see what happens with Jamie French, though. He'll visit Texas this weekend. I think Texas will be one of the 2 at the end of the day he chooses from. Who is that main competition? We will see. All right, moving on here. Craig Johnson, how do Sark and Mack Brown recruiting in year 4 compare? When Strong and Herman were hired, I was excited. I think Sark is the one to get our beloved Horns back to winning. He's definitely on track to do that. He started it this year. I thought that year 2 for Sark was huge, going from 5-7 to 8-5. That takes away a lot of negative recruiting. You've seen what happened as Billy Napier struggled to get over the hump in Florida. Makes recruiting difficult at the end, closing out these classes. I thought Sark going from 5 wins to 8 wins in year 2 was huge. And then obviously last year getting the 12 wins, college football playoff, Big 12 championship, 11 players drafted. I mean, 3rd straight top 5 level class. I think Sark's doing a tremendous job. Is doing a tremendous job recruiting right now. I think the staff is doing a very good job evaluating talent, developing talent, and really locking in and staying on those A group guys in recruiting, right? They recruit through the whistle. They're going to continue to fight for guys even if they commit to other schools. I think they're doing a great job. Now, Mack Brown was as good as you'll ever find in the living room with the families, closing out and recruiting. Recruiting's different now, though. Recruiting is more closing out in June, decisions in July. 85% of kids out there. Not that Mack would not excel in it today. It's just such a different game now. But I do think Sark is doing the best job of recruiting, building a roster, developing a roster, as I've seen in my years doing this now. We'll see. Mack Brown had a lot of great players come through the University of Texas, won the national title, lost in a national title game when Colt got hurt, was close a number of other times to getting to the national championship game. Had a couple of rough losses there. So we'll see long-term how that shakes out. But I think Sark and his staff are doing a great job with evaluation, development, staying on the top targets, not deviating from that, and continuing to evaluate senior year guys in adding to your classes. I think a lot of times nowadays we look for the June, July classes, see where they're ranked in August before the ball's ever kicked before senior years or football season. But if you think about last year, Xavier feels to me didn't have an offer right now. Wardell Mack was about to commit to Florida. Ty Anthony Smith committed to A&M a little later on. So Texas stays on these guys. They keep battling for their guys, no matter if they're committed to Texas or somewhere else. So something just to keep in mind with this recruiting class as well, because you won't get them all. You just got to keep battling. Ekim, how do the 2025 targets think of Diabell committing to Texas? I think guys like it, but I think these guys are more focused. They're so focused on who the quarterbacks are at Texas right now. I mean, for all these kids are thinking, I'm going to come in and play as a freshman, so who's my quarterback going to be at Texas? I don't think they're really thinking about the guys that develop later, but I think Diabell is going to be a popular kid with a lot of prospects. And just he can follow up with just keep stacking top 5 classes and Texas will be fine. Absolutely true there. I think on recruiting wise, if you have 3 straight top 5 level classes and you have a 12th ranked class, I'm not saying Texas is this year. I think they're going to be inside the top 7. But if you have a top 12 class, I mean, that's fine too. Michigan had a couple of top 10 classes, did a great job developing their players into the program that Jim Harbaugh ultimately won a national title and left. W.A. Jones said, like I said yesterday, Sark's got it rolling. Absolutely. I'm going down here. Michael Gresser has a good question here. Who of the uncommitted DTs do you think Texas has the best shot at with? It's a good question. I mean, I think Brandon Brown likes the idea of playing at Texas, remains committed to Texas. He'll visit Oklahoma this weekend. Obviously, I think Texas, LSU still where that decision will come from ultimately. But I think Brandon Brown likes the idea of playing at Texas. We'll see how it shakes out. I think Texas has a legitimate shot at Myron Charles, guys. He visits FSU this weekend. I know there's been a lot of confidence on the FSU side. I think Texas is right there in the thick of that race. Josiah Sharma, I think they're right there in the thick of that race with Alabama, maybe Oregon. Washington also got a visit, but really been trending more Texas, Alabama. We'll see if Oregon made enough of a dent. But did Kevin Wynn? I think Texas put their best foot forward this week in with Kevin Wynn, and I think Texas showed him all the capabilities outside of football for him from a networking perspective. He wants to be a chef. Culinary is very, very important to him. Yes, he wants to be a great football player, but he has a real interest in cooking, being a chef, owning his own restaurant one day. I think Texas did a great job there. Again, he'll be at FSU this weekend as well. So a lot of eyes in Austin will be on FSU this weekend because Myron Charles is there. Kevin Wynn is there. And Javion Hilson, the FSU commitment, who's an edge target for Texas, will be on campus in Tallahassee this weekend as well, as will Lamont Rogers. So there's a number of guys Texas is recruiting at FSU this weekend. So, again, thank you all for all you guys for joining in tonight. We'll just keep taking all your questions. Ekim, did Kevin try to make brisket during his visit? I don't know that. I know he cooked up a couple of steaks, though. But I wonder if he didn't take a visit to USC because of Lincoln's brisket. I will have to ask him that at some point. I don't know. We'll have to look. All right, Shook Ones has a good question. How are we looking with Pettijohn post-visit? And when does Matai Tagovailoa visit? He's the USC commitment. We'll see. I think Texas will stay on him, see what USC does this year on the field defensively. Madden Faramo, 4-star linebacker from San Juan Capistrano, scheduled to be in this weekend. Most people consider him a Notre Dame lean. We'll see if Texas can close the gap there. Obviously, Riley Pettijohn. Look, I think 3 teams are really in this thing. I think it's Texas. I think it's a Texas A&M, and I think it's Ohio State. He also visited USC, but I think Texas and Ohio State have maybe been the top 2 for a while here. Texas, I think, has been in a good position. I think Ohio State's done very well in this recruitment as well. Let's see what Texas A&M does this weekend. I think they're going to throw every kitchen sink in College Station at this recruitment this weekend with Riley Pettijohn. I think, one of the things you come down to the wire here, Texas has Elijah Barnes already. The last thing A&M really wants to see is Elijah Barnes and Riley Pettijohn go to Texas. Mike Elko's a defensive guy now. Last thing you want is 2 elite linebackers in this state going the same direction. Oh, by the way, I talked to Jonathan Cunningham a little while ago, and he had great things to say about his Texas visit. He's scheduled to visit Kansas this weekend. Missouri's trying to get him on campus for a visit. I think he'll decide early mid-July there. Jonathan Cunningham was hosted by Ty Anthony Smith, had a great visit this week. UT boy, I got to get this one. I got to answer this one. Over under on Jonte week 1. Colorado State 2:30 game. Let's go with 5 catches for 70 yards and a touchdown. You like that, UT boy? Aloha Traveler, thank you very much for this super chat. The door seems to be opening more and more in Florida for Texas. One thing I admire most about Sark is his ability to adjust real time in recruiting. The depth in this program right now is remarkable. Tend to agree. I look, Jeff Banks does work in Southwest Florida. So does that's a short choice. I think Kenny Baker will recruit some in Florida as well. So I think you have 3 coaches that can put feet on the ground in Florida and recruit in Florida a little bit. Obviously, Jamie French out of Jacksonville. That's not an area Texas has had success recruiting. So we'll see. Orlando, Tampa, IMG, Bradenton's where Texas had the most success. We'll see what happens now in Jacksonville, Jamie French. I like that Texas continues to expand. I'm going to have to stop and cough a couple of times tonight. Got a little allergies. So, all right. So let's see. Do you eat Thunder Pup? Do you think Diabell's recruitment is related to the recent wide receiver OV weekend? I do not. I think Diabell likes Sarkisian in the quarterback development, likes the program in general. He camped there in 8th grade when he went summer before 9th grade. When he went to A&M, he stopped by Texas. He's had an interest in Texas, and especially that came to be real when Steve Sarkisian was hired. But I think the offense, Sarkisian quarterback development, Texas in the SEC, they're going to be playing a lot of games in the Southeast. I think all those things factored in. I think he had a great unofficial visit in March when he watched Texas spring practice when Texas offered him. And so I just think it was a combination of all of it that he picked Texas. But the main thing, look, it goes back to this quarterback development. Where does he think he's going to go and develop? And I think that's another big check mark for Steve Sarkisian in quarterback development. I mean, another pro athlete who understands development. Raja Bell is not a highly rated guy coming out of high school. He signs with FIU. He goes on, has a 12-year NBA career. You don't do that without maximizing your talent and developing every part of your game. Development, big. So I think Diabell sees the development piece with Steve Sarkisian in Texas, and that was big in his decision to pick the Longhorns. So, and I think he liked Austin, everything about the program as well, move to the SEC, but really quarterback development, I think, was big. So so David Rawls has something here. Sorry, UT boy, for that. David Rawls, seems like a lot of dates of certain commitments are strategic. Maybe not. I think a lot of these guys, they go through this visit process and they're tired. It's exhausting. They're starting to feel the pressure. I talked to a high school coach today whose kid's starting to feel the pressure a little bit when it gets down to the wire. So you go through this visit process. Recruiting's fun until the stress hits at the end. And you want to make these decisions, and you have to make these decisions. Then you want to get it out of the way and enjoy your senior year, enjoy what's left of your summer, get the stress out of the picture, and get these announcement behind you and enjoy your senior year. And I think that's the one good thing about the recruiting calendar moving up is these kids get through the recruiting process, get it behind them, and enjoy their senior year without as many distractions. But I do think, to David Rawls' point, I mean, look, we have a Smith Orogbo July 1st, right? We have Marco Jones is July 2nd. Zion Williams is July 4th. Nick Townsend at Dakorien, the tight end, which is a huge visit coming up for Texas this week. He told me within the hour that he wants to make a decision first, second week of July. So I think it'll be before July 10th right now for Nick Townsend, which he's coming off the A&M visit. He's already been to Bama. He's been to USC, goes to Texas this weekend. He'll be making that visit with mom, dad, and a cousin. Big visit for Texas there this weekend at tight end, by the way. So we'll see what happens there. And by the way, on Nick Townsend, he told me Texas is saying, look, man, we want you at tight end, but if you want to play linebacker edge, you can do that too. We just want you in the program. So interesting there, I think, is up. So I think he prefers tight end. But if he thinks he can get on the field quicker somewhere else, he's not averse to that. But I do think he prefers tight end. But a lot of these decisions are coming in early, mid-July. I think 80-85% of these kids, they're all going to be committed before first game of their senior season. I got a super chat here from Mr. Talk Too Much, 817 Mr. Talk Too Much. Taking into account all the talent Sark has had on the offense in his coaching career and what's on their horizon, Sark or Mack, #1 recruiter ever? Great question. I think it's to be determined there. I think Mack is, as far as communication, that guy had memory recall like very few people I've ever come across on recruiting. He was so smooth and so good in recruiting. Rod Babers has told the stories. I just did the interview Saturday with BJ Johnson, Roy Williams, and Sloan. They all talked about Mack a little bit in there. It's kind of funny stuff. If you haven't seen that video here on Texas Football, getting the big three together was a lot of fun. But look, I think we'll see. We'll see what happens there. I like the staff that Sark has assembled to recruit in the Southeast. I think that's one thing I've learned. I made mistakes early in this business, focusing on the head coach when he was hired too much versus your staff is everything when you're hired. And I really believe when you get one of these big jobs, who did you hire on your staff when you're initially hired? That tells you a lot about if a coach understands, one, the job he just took, and the recruiting geography of that job, what the future may hold for that job in recruiting, which with Texas is the SEC, right? And you were going to have your California footprint. I think the hire of Johnny Nance was tremendous by Sark as he continues to evolve and plan more and plan differently for Texas in recruiting. Yes, he had his connections, but he's a head coach at Texas. He's a busy man. He's got a lot of obligations. I think that Johnny Nansen hire in SoCal, getting into Las Vegas, keeping you strong in Arizona was tremendous. But that initial staff, if you go back to Sark's initial staff, I mean, Terry Joseph, Bo Davis, Brandon Harrison, recruiting role, Cortez Hankton's brother in a in-house recruiting role. There was a number of coaches that had Louisiana ties, right? Knowing Louisiana was big, knowing that in Bo Davis recruiting in the Southeast, Jeff Banks is recruited everywhere around the country. You've seen him do work in Tampa here this spring going out. He's part of the Myron Charles recruitment in Port Charlotte with Kenny Baker. So I think you look at that staff after Stan Drayton moves on, what happens? You hire Tashard Choice. Where does he have ties? Atlanta, Southeast, Florida. Huge. I mean, Cedric Baxter's not at Texas. Jarrett Gibson's not at Texas if Tashard Choice isn't hired. So that got you into the state of Florida. And he was big in the Peyton Kirkland recruitment, even though Peyton Kirkland's hit the portal. So I think the moves he's made, Chris Jackson, obviously a SoCal guy, can help in modern day, coached at Jacksonville, has ties in Arizona. Another good hire there for the areas that Sark wants to hit in recruiting moving forward. So I think Sark's done a great job with the initial staff where their strengths were in recruiting. And then when he's made changes, who he replaced those guys with that have continued building that recruiting momentum in the Southeast region, because that's going to be everything moving forward in the SEC. Not that California is not really important, not that the ability to recruit nationally isn't, but Texas, Louisiana, move along I-10, south into Florida, north a little bit, up, maybe 65 along I-20. Some of those areas, those are just going to be big the next decade for Texas football recruiting. And I think Sark's done a great job of putting staff together that can maximize those areas. All right. David Rawls said Torrey Beckton's huge as well. I'll say this. One of the interesting things yesterday talking to Smith Orogbo was we're talking about his visit, and Smith talked about nutrition and a strength and conditioning program, how impressed he was with that. And we started talking about Zena was his host. And he mentioned to me, Zena was 235 pounds in January when he enrolled at Texas. He's 260 now. That's 25 pounds of strength on a long, somewhat wiry frame that'll end up being 275 one day. But the work Torrey Beckton's doing, the nutrition program, those are big hits with guys that are really into that physical development part of it. A guy like Smith Orogbo was 6'4", 204 pounds, starting his junior seasons up to 218 now. His big gains, strength and weight-wise on that frame are out in front of him. Will be his first year in college. So he recognizes that. Having Zena host him, good move by Texas as well. Shookwin's question on still confidence with Khalid Lockett. We'll see this weekend on that visit. He's a guy who's going to be at Alabama midweek, coming to Texas this weekend. I think LSU's very much in play there. He's been to USC. He's been to Texas A&M. Texas A&M going to take 3 receivers in this class. Obviously, he's one of their top targets. So I think LSU's in a decent spot there. See what happens with Alabama this weekend. See what happens with a Texas visit. I think Texas takes 3 or 4 receivers in this class. So a lot going on here. Kimmons, I'd like to see more South Georgia prospects too. I know Ryan Nelson, who's on these chats sometimes, who lives in the Atlanta area, he echoes that. I echo that as well. I think South Georgia is a great area to evaluate, and you can get those kids on campus for visits. Georgia can't take all the guys, and there's a lot of talent in the Atlanta area and South Georgia right now. Savannah area is loaded in upcoming classes. All right, Jeremy Weisberg has a good one here. Let me get another call. Oh, sorry. Can you talk about Aiden Andy as a player? We don't hear from him from a rankings perspective. Yeah, I think the rankings will catch up with Aiden Andy his senior season. Look, he really kind of burst onto the scene in a recruiting manner when he went to the Under Armour camp in Dallas in early March, and he posted that sub 4.6 laser 40, which that may not sound fast, but being part of ESPN and Under Armour camps for years, if you run a sub 4.6 laser start, laser finish on an Under Armour camp time, that puts you in a very high percentile. And then you ran off a 4.12 shuttle, I believe that was, laser shuttle. So he showed the ability to run, change direction. He did very well at that camp in the one-on-one setting. So then people started looking at that junior tape. Key there is he was a basketball-focused kid. Came back to football this year, has so much talent as a cover guy naturally. I think he's got good length, haven't seen him in person. He's got a good build. Not a wiry kid. He's going to have some strength to that frame as he gets into a college weight program. By the way, he can really shoot the basketball. If you haven't watched his huddle, go watch it. He made well over 100 3-pointers this year. One of the, I think he was second team All-State in Louisiana. He can really shoot the basketball, man, on a team that has one of the best freshman prospects in America that played football and basketball there at Ruston High. Will be offered by everybody. But Aiden Anning, I think, can play corner. I think he can play nickel. I think he's a really good prospect. I think it's a big weekend for Texas, big week period with the 3 midweek defensive back visits. That's Dorian Brew, Dejon Lee, and Nathan Tillman, this SMU commitment, who I think Texas has a real shot at. Then this weekend with Aiden Anding, Devin Williams from Buford, Georgia, committed to Auburn. Still going to visit Texas as of right now. We'll see. I think that one's a tough one. But then you have Cade Phillips, the versatile defensive back out of Hightower. I think one of the higher upside prospects Texas is recruiting in this class. 6'2", about 180. Look, long jump 24/7, back-to-back weeks this year. Over 10-inch hands, 80-inch wingspan, has ball skills at receiver. You see that if you go see him in person. But Cade Phillips, big recruitment, was at LSU last week, and I think it's coming down to Texas and LSU for Cade Phillips. So we'll see what to. And Kevin Randolph asked, where will Troy Hoon go now? That's a good question. I don't have that answer. We'll have to see what happens there. LSU obviously had offered him a while back, so we'll see what kind of push they make. 817 Talk Too Much as an interesting one. I want to know, Kelshawn seems to be more of an A&M lean. French, I think, is in the boat. He reminds me of Roy Williams, kind of. Tanook visited Notre Dame last weekend, scheduled to be at Baylor. Scheduled to be at Baylor this weekend. Already visited USC. I think Notre Dame's strong competition there for Tanook. I'm a big fan of Tanook as an athlete, period. If he plays receiver, great. If he plays safety, great. Anybody at 6'1", 190, runs 10.45, 10.53, second in the state in the 200, I believe, to the blur Jelani Watkins. I say that because I know people's like, whoa, track speed, that means you can play defensive back. But when I saw him as a sophomore, he's a very physical player at wide receiver. And Dekaney's playing him at wide receiver and safety this season. So that'll be interesting to see with Tanook Hines. As far as Kelshawn and A&M Lean, I think that's going to be a very interesting decision by Kelshawn. I believe Texas is where he wants to be. I do kind of wonder where the timing is with everything. A&M obviously prioritizing him. Sark's prioritized him too. If anybody, Texas fans, don't think Sark doesn't want Kelshawn Johnson, they're wrong. They've been wrong the whole time. Look, I mean, Sark covets the type of speed, playmaker, and explosive ability that Kelshawn Johnson has. And he has yet to truly tap into it because he's a three-sport guy at a smaller school, and they go far and win state in basketball last 2 years. So he has yet to really tap into it. That staff does a good job down at Hitchcock with him. But he is a guy that I think is just going to explode when he gets to college. He reminds me of some of those receivers I covered out of South Florida for years that you just said, man, when that guy gets to a college strength and conditioning program, he's going to take off. He's going to ascend. I could see that with Kelshawn. I think Texas wants him badly. I think A&M wants him badly. We'll see which way that goes. Jamie French, I'm not sure on Roy Williams. I kind of see more A.D. Mitchell there. Maybe a little bit more initial acceleration after the catch. I'm not saying Jamie French will run 4.35 at the NFL Combine one day, but I don't think anybody thought A.D. Mitchell was coming out of high school either. I think he reminds me of that frame-wise, having seen Jamie in person, has that great body control, the ability to go win the 50-50 contested ball, the ability to track the ball in the air. I think those are strengths of Jamie French. I think that frame is very similar to A.D. Mitchell. You know, he was 6'1.5", maybe 165 a year and a half, 2 years ago. Now he's 6'2", 180, and it's a 6'2", 180 that isn't close to filling out. He's going to be a 6'2", 205-pound guy in time. I really think that's where he's headed. So that'll be interesting. All right, so let's get to more of these questions. Here's one from Doug Haywood. Congratulations to Diabell on his commitment to Texas. I'm glad he committed. However, I'm worried about in-state talented quarterbacks like DJ Lagway, Keelan Russell being passed up there. Just as good, in my opinion. Yeah, so I think it's interesting. You know, look, you got to trust Sark on quarterback recruiting, right? But I get what people are talking about from an in-state quarterback perspective. Maybe not DJ Lagway, because the reality of that recruitment is when Arch Manning committed to Texas, it was going to be, if anybody saw themselves as a 5-star quarterback in the following class, that was going to be a little iffy and difficult. So I don't think that would have happened. That would not have been a reality. Keelan Russell this year, KJ Lacey. Texas loves KJ Lacey. Went on him early. I think Texas really liked Keelan Russell. Be interesting to see those guys in the next 3-4 years, how that pans out. With Diabell, I think, look, 26 quarterback recruiting in-state. I think there's some good players. And I think you look, Sark, A.J. Milwee went and looked at all those guys. They've watched all those guys play. And I think they just decided Diabell was the guy for them. And look, haven't seen Diabell in person. I get it. I get what Texas likes. I get what all those schools like. I mean, Diabell had, 35, 36 offers when he committed to Texas, with FSU being the most recent one. He had most of the blue blood offers there. So I think he's a tremendous prospect. Here's something from Thomas Quinn. That 26 class is going to be lethal. Already trending for Tredarin Ball, John Turntine. Says they're going to be a top 3 class. Be interesting to see what happens. If Texas signs a big class this year, will it be a little bit smaller class next year? We'll have to see how the numbers work out. But I think Texas is in such a great spot. If they go have a really good, let's say, 10-win season, year one in the SEC, they're off and running in recruiting. I really believe that. So we'll see what happens there. Again, thank you for joining the Longhorn live stream. We're calling this one the Talkin' Ball live stream tonight. Byron, this is an interesting question. Is Jordan Whittington a good comp for Tanook Hines? You know, that's interesting because I think Tanook, similar frame. I think Tanook is maybe a more of a limber body, though. I think Jordan worked out so much he got a little tight. But I think from a physicality and a mindset standpoint, I don't think that's far off at all. I think Tanook Hines has some of that some of those qualities that Jordan Whittington has that made Jordan Whittington such a good player at Texas. And I think that'll give him the ability to stick in the NFL. I think Hines may be a little track faster, right? I think because considering the times he just put up as a junior and how much he made that jump from sophomore 10.85 in the 100 to 10.45, 10.5 as a junior. Now, these guys don't run track as seniors. They all early graduates now. But I think Hines is on a trajectory. He's a faster athlete maybe than Whittington at the same age. But from a mindset standpoint, Byron, I think you're on to something there. I really like that comparison. So let's see. We're going to go down here. Adam Lane asked, does Texas still have 4 silence? Yeah, absolutely. I don't think anything's changed there. Now, do all the silence become public? We'll see. Last year, a couple of them did not. So we'll see what happens there. Let's see. Ekim asks, is there a Dakorien Moore type of receiver prospect in the state of Texas 26? I know there's some really good prospects in Texas in 26, but look, you guys know they've been part of this on Texas football, rapid growth. I was saying last year, Dakorien Moore is the best receiver in the state, period. Didn't matter what classification anybody was in. I think he's a super freak, man. I think he's up there with those really top guys that I've covered from a ability standpoint. Like if he goes out and maximizes his talent, he's in that really high level class of guys. And I'm not going to bring up the names because then people start freaking out and they put your name on it. But Dakorien Moore can be about as good as he wants to be. And I think right now he is trending to be a tremendous, tremendous football player. There just aren't many guys that he just moves different than most people do. And when you see him on a field with 20 other Division I players, he still moves different. There's just that initial movement, but his ability to explode off the line of scrimmage, accelerate, get the top end, throw on the brakes and decel, get into a cut and get out of a cut is different than most guys. Most guys, that takes a lot of body control, great athleticism, great pair of feet. And he has got that ability to decelerate at the speed he does. Makes him a little different, and he'll go fight for the football. And he's good after the catch, and he's a physical player. I just think Dakorien Moore's tremendous. I don't think we'll see somebody like that again in Texas at wide receiver for a while that plays that position. There might be a 6'5" guy that's a great vertical guy that can go up and get the football. But I mean, what Dakorien does well, he's better than most. Thomas Quinn as a 6'17", what's your prediction for the way this wide receiver class shakes out? Good question. Ask me again after this weekend. Let's see what happens after this weekend. Some key visits coming up. Here's a good question from Jedi Master Bevo. Would a Moore commit cause dominoes to fall like Manning and Simmons the last 2 years? What's interesting is when Manning committed, that was a late June type of deal, coming off official visits. That really helped jumpstart that class, especially those offensive linemen that kind of fell in place after that, right? Colin Simmons waited more into August. That was a little longer recruitment to play out. We'll see what Dakorien Moore does. I mean, look, first day of school, what in Texas is August 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, depending on where you go to school. I think we'll see something with Dakorien Moore around that same time. Colin Simmons, I think he's such a big time recruit. You're going to have all the local TVs. You're going to have everybody trying to stream that announcement. That's one that has to be set up. It's going to be done in a big way at Duncanville. It could be July, could be early August. We'll see. That's on Dakorien's timeline, but I think that one may take a little bit longer to play out, and that's going to be a big, very big commitment ceremony in my estimation, because he didn't have it the first time. I think he'll get that this second go around when he makes his final decision here. That'll be interesting to see. He goes to Oregon this weekend. All right, Tyler Reeves. This is a good question. Hold on, I need to get enough. Is there any way you see Texas recruiting a two-way player that allows Texas to play both sides of the ball, like Travis Hunter? Travis Hunter's a super freak, right? I mean, he's in that category of those guys that are very rare. Look, if there was ever a guy like that, maybe, but man, it's tough. I mean, think about trying to be a receiver in Sark's system, how difficult that is to pick up, how long it takes to develop as a receiver there as far as the pre-snap, learning that playbook, big playbook, a lot's put on your plate. Then if you tried to turn around and play defensive back, I don't know. That would take one very, very special player. I think the odds are stacked against that, honestly. But it's a good question. I don't want to say never, because sometimes those guys come along. So we'll see what happens there. All right, let's see. I'm going down again. Okay, this is interesting from Russ Hinkle. Not a recruiting question, but where do you expect to see Nanson's mark on defense this year? I think maybe a little more aggressiveness up front, maybe a little more exotic blitzes. I think you could see some of that factor in this year. With Johnny Nansen, you look what he did at Arizona, kind of look what they did with their fronts. Kind of Rod Babers talked about this with the exotics in the blitz game, seemingly doing something every week. Great job that I believe they did against Washington. I think you're going to see some of that this year. I really think that. I think a more aggressive defensive front especially on the interior times, is there's something I'm looking out for as well this year. So we shall see. All right. 817 Mr. Talk Too Much has a super chat. Good questions. DL seems to be the only question mark. Contingency plans. Who? What's interesting, I think this is going to come down to Texas winning out for their guys. I mean, look, you've had Josiah Sharma on campus, Myron Charles on campus. I think Texas is in the top 2 for those guys. This last weekend, Kevin Wynn, first trip ever to Austin. Then you have Brandon Brown, who you need to hold on to, right? Because if not, he probably goes to LSU, and then this chat will get wild. So with Texas and LSU fans, by the way. And I think Brandon Brown likes the idea of playing Texas. Then this weekend, you have Zion Williams. You have DJ Sanders from Belleville, who's more of the developmental prospect of those 6. It's going to take him a little longer, I think, in his development. The key is, can Texas win out on 3 of those guys? I mean, that's saying hitting 50% of national recruitments or recruitments against your regional rivals. If you go 3 for 6, Texas has done a hell of a job, in my estimation. That's normally a 2 for 6 scenario to me. If Texas were to get 3 of those guys, I think it'd be a great class. I do think Texas will continue to evaluate guys. I think a 4-man class is probably where Texas heads. And if you only have 3 guys early, or if you only have 2 early, I think Texas will continue to chip away at some other guys, stay on some of those guys, see how the seasons go, see what happens with the coaching carousel. Also look at a senior year evaluations at that position, see if there's anybody they can or want to try to flip. So I think I think that'll be interesting to see. But I think Texas they have to win 2 of these 6. If they win 2 of these 6, they're off to a good start. If they only win 1 of the 6, then they got some work to make up. Let's see. David Rawls asks, is DJ Sanders a sleeper recruit? I put him more as a developmental recruit. So I think he's just going to take a little time in that development. I think that's more of a 2-year window to develop for him, develop physically, develop technically. He got to get off his toes a little bit. He plays maybe on his tiptoes a little bit too much. So you get some developmental things with him that are going to have to occur. And I think that plus the physical may take him a little longer than some of the other guys that Texas is recruiting of those 6. So we'll see what happens there. Shook One's a good question here. And we're going to get a couple more questions in. We're going to go for about 5 more minutes. Shook Ones, your opinion, is Lance Jackson a D-end or D-tackle long-term? He says he needs to lose weight, so he definitely wants to be a D-end. What I like about Lance Jackson, one of the things Rod Babers talks about that I am absolutely on board with him is moving some of these guys inside on 3rd down. That's going to be the key. So Lance Jackson, if he ends up being a 6'6", 280-pound, powerful pass rushing end, that's a guy that can play 3 downs, but can do it in a different way, right? If you have a NASCAR package, you can bring him inside and let him blitz up the middle, let him play at that D tackle position or 3 technique on 3rd down. I think he's going to have that ability as a player. I think it's going to be hard to keep that frame under 275, 280. He's just going to be too big. And man, does he look great. I mean, a word coming out of Austin again, every time he shows up is he may be the best looking prospect on the hoof that Texas has come in. So I think that's going to be very interesting to see what happens. But I think defensive end with the ability to be a 3rd down interior pass rusher is something I could see from him. So again, I want to take a second before I want to make a run, kind of go over the guys that visited last weekend to end the show, maybe take a couple more questions. But I want to take a second again for John Donovan of Longhorn Wealth Management, the sole sponsor of Talkin Ball Longhorn live stream. As a proud University of Texas alum, John has served for 15 years as a Texas Ex's board member while focusing his firm on serving his fellow UT alumni and all UT employees. John's a certified financial planner who spent over 30 years providing investment, retirement, insurance, and estate planning services and solutions to Longhorn families and friends across the nation. So to receive your free 90-minute consultation to explore how Longhorn Wealth can help you and your family secure your own financial future, simply call the Longhorn Wealth team at 972-707-4900 or schedule an appointment online at www.longhornwealth.net. Finally, Longhorn Wealth is wishing good luck to all our current and former Longhorns competing at the U.S. Olympic trials for a right to represent USA in the Summer Olympics in France in July and August. Hook 'em. Thank you very much to John Donovan. All right, real quick, I want to go down kind of just speed. I call it speed dating. Well, I got some fun with this, right? The visitors last weekend. Ricky Stewart, running back, committed to Texas. Wide receiver Dakorien Moore. I still think Texas is in a good spot there. Kelshawn Johnson's going to decide between Texas A&M. I think he likes Texas more. I'm not saying he's going to pick Texas. We'll see where that goes. That's a nice little battle there. A&M saying you're the guy. You can be the guy of a three-man receiver class. And then Texas has Dakorien Moore, Jamie French, a lot of these big-time guys visiting. Also going to take a 3 or 4-man wide receiver class. I think that'll be an interesting little battle there. Dalen McCutcheon, I tend to like FSU for him going into the visit this weekend. At offensive line, we haven't talked about. I think John Mills can make a decision this week, or it could be 3 weeks away. I think it'll be Texas or Washington. I think Florida's on the peripheral. Some people have said Florida is very much in it. I'm not buying it. I think that's Texas or Washington. It has been all along. That comes down to if he wants to play football in the South, it'll be Texas. And obviously, you have the family ties up in Washington. The 4 family members that played at the University of Washington. Then you have Nick Brooks. This is going to be interesting, guys. Nick Brooks had a whale of a time at Texas. He had a great visit, as did his mom, little brother. Actually, I think he won the karaoke contest Saturday. If you ask the other visitors that were on campus, they said he sang country song at karaoke and kind of stole the show. He was the best singer. So Nick Brooks may have a voice on him too. We're going to have to ask Nick about that. But I think Texas and Georgia duking this one out. I think this one could play out a little while. It'll be interesting. This may not be a late June, early July one. This could play out. Some guys might want to wait till right when their senior season starts, like Jamie French is around late August 30th. We'll see on Nick Brooks. I think it's a possibility it could play out a little bit longer. But I like where Texas is at in this battle. We'll see how it goes. I mean, it's Georgia. This is a large human battle. Kyle Flood, Stacy Searle, Steve Sarkisian, Kirby Smart, Texas, Georgia. We're gonna have a lot of these in the future. Lamont Rogers, bit of a wild card, visiting Oklahoma midweek, FSU weekend. He came with his uncle on the visit. We'll see where that one goes. I think he had a great visit. Mom was here in April, was not on this visit. Apparently, she's going to go to Oklahoma. We'll have to see what happens. Missouri in the picture, A&M in the picture there. D-line, Kevin Wynn, we went over that. Florida State this weekend. I think FSU, Texas, South Carolina, Georgia, all 4 in it. I think somebody in the family may want him closer home. That's understandable. Most parents do. Most family members do. But if Kevin Wynn wants to get away, I think they're going to be supportive of that decision. I think Kevin is interesting. I think he's his own man. I think he's really looking at this from a football and that culinary, being a chef, owning a restaurant, that perspective. And I think wherever that bond, the combination of that is best is where he'll end up, whether that's Austin, Tallahassee, Columbia, or stays close to home in Athens. We'll see what happens there. Talked about Brandon Brown. I think Brandon really likes the idea of playing at Texas. We'll see how those discussions go with his family after he visits OU. I think he'll have a final decision late June, early July. I think that one's coming. Riley Pettijohn will be at A&M this weekend. Texas, Ohio State, A&M. I think he visited USC, but I think those are the 3. A&M's going to throw the entire kitchen sinks in College Station M this weekend. We'll see what happens there. Texas has been a pretty good spot. Jonathan Cunningham, I think it's a recruitment Texas can win. He's going to either visit Kansas or Missouri this weekend. And then Tristan Castro is interesting at DB, guys. And I'll get back on edge. Smither Rogbo and Marco Jones in a second. Tristan Castro committed to USC, had a great time. Mom, aunt were on the visit with him. CJ Vogel and I talked to him at Austin Bergstrom Airport before he left on Sunday. I think Texas, look, I think USC still kind of maybe has to mess it up a little bit if the visit doesn't go great. Maybe the visit isn't as good as Texas. That could be a decision. But we'll see. He's at USC this weekend. But I think what Texas has done is they're giving themselves a chance at some of these recruitments where you have to get them on campus to give yourself an opportunity. And like I've been saying, I think Texas will win 2 or 3 of these. We don't expect them to. And they'll probably drop a couple that we think they're going to win right now. And I think that's par for the course when you're recruiting this many 4-star, 5-star, top 300 level players around the country. So that's pretty much last weekend's official visits. Let me cough, and I got one more thing for you guys. Hold on. All right, now this weekend, let's kind of real quick. Let's see this. Let's get a few more questions. Wynn's tape is dominant. Yeah, Rick Ambergi, I agree. I think Kevin Wynn is a really good football player. When I saw him in person at the sectional track meet in Carrollton, Georgia, man, is he put together. He's going to be a barrel-chested guy, thick arms, big elbow bones, 6'2", 315 on his visit last weekend. And he's got quickness. Watching him throw the discus at the regional meet, he's got that explosiveness, that quickness, that ability to bend and create that explosion that gives, here's some of Kevin Wynn here. It gives him the ability, yeah, he'll be really good over the ball, but I'm telling you, he might be able to play some 3 too. He might be able to play in a B gap. He is not just an A-gap player. I think he's a very talented player, and I really like that frame, and I like that kid's mentality. I'm a big fan. A big fan of Kevin Wynn. A big fan of the way, the maturity he handles everything with as well. Just getting to know him a little bit. But that initial power, look at that combo. He plays low, and then he fires up right into that offensive lineman. He's not a guy that plays high. He understands leverage. He does at times. All guys do until they learn that their butt's got to be above their shoulders consistency. You see there in his stance. But still, with that being said, look at that initial quickness, those movement skills. That's a guy that he can play over the ball, but he's going to be able to play some in the B gaps too, scheme dependent. So good looking prospect, super strong kid naturally. He's got good quickness. He's not going to be a chase outside the numbers pursuer of the ball, but in between the hash marks, he's got that quickness to pursue the football. So he very talented. All right, JDM Master Bevo has one. Fasusi, Brooks, and Mills will be an elite offensive line class to go with what Texas has committed. Yeah, totally agree. I mean, look, if Texas end up with that 6-man offensive line class, I don't think there'd be a Texas fan complaining about anything on the offensive line. Adam Jones brought this up. Sorry, almost forgot. Jones and Orogbo, Marco Jones. Everything we're hearing sounds like Texas or Michigan on July 2nd. We'll see what happens this weekend with the visit, but I think Texas did a great job. Johnny Nansen, obviously. Texas was recruiting Marco Jones when Jeff Choate was there. Johnny Nansen came in after Choate got the Nevada job and has really even kickstarted that California recruiting even more for Texas. Texas legitimate shot at Marco Jones there. By the way, his dad looks like he can still play. Played at Northwestern Colorado, I believe. I mean, I was like, wow. He said he had 1 play left. He said he couldn't play anymore. He had 1 play left. Smith Orogbo is going to be very interesting to me. July 1st announcement. He said 4 schools, Texas, Texas Tech, Oklahoma, where he visits this weekend in Washington. I don't see Washington. That surprised me. I think they've done a fine job recruiting him. I don't see that far. There was a lot of noise coming off the Texas Tech visit last weekend. I know Texas fans are curious because the parents didn't make the trip. I believe they had to work this weekend. His father was on the trip in April. Academics are what matters 1,000% to that family. I think Smith Orogbo, the football component, is very important to him as well. If Smith doesn't go to Texas, I think it's because maybe people around him might think it's Austin's too big, too much going on. They want him in a smaller environment. That would be my best bet at being around that recruitment a little bit. But the visit to Oklahoma this weekend will be key there as well. That'll mean 2 visits coming away from since the Texas Tech visit. We'll see what happens. But I think Smith likes Texas. I'm not saying he's going to Texas. I think he likes Texas more than maybe people let on. So then this weekend, percentage on one of the highs. Pretty high. Pretty high. I'll say that. All right. So this go over this weekend real quick. You have the 3 DBs, midweek visitors. Dejon Lee, assuming he makes it in. Dorian Brew and Nathan Tillman out of Mansfield Timberview. We'll see what happens with Dorian Brew. Texas wanted to get him in on a weekend. The midweek wasn't the first option. That's when they're getting him in, though. That's just the reality of it. And we'll see what happens. There was at Oregon last week and has Ohio State this weekend. We'll be at Texas midweek. Obviously, USC is getting a lot of run with him right now. Visited LSU as well. But I think Texas has been in this for a while. We'll see what happens after this week. Nathan Tillman committed to SMU. He visits TCU after Texas. Was at Baylor last weekend. Was at Utah the 7th. I'm a fan of the guy. I'm a fan of guys that are 185 pounds and run 10.7 as juniors in high school that are also true safeties, have been playing the safety position. When I was through Mansfield Timberview last year, and I kind of asked about, I was there to see Dylan battle the D lineman, and I asked about other prospects at the school who's standing out. The staff brought up Tillman as a guy who was really coming on in that program, and they were spot on with that. Then he went out on the track and burned it up this year at 185 pounds. I think Texas has a legit shot there. Then this weekend, I mean, it's a huge visit weekend. Obviously, you have KJ Lacey committed. You have James Simon committed. The receivers coming in, Jamie French and Khalil Lockett. Tight ends big this weekend. Amari Winston committed, but then Nick Townsend is in this weekend as well. I think that's a huge visit weekend for Texas with Nick Townsend, because I think he's one of the elite athletes in America in this class. D-line, obviously offensive line, we've been over that. Fasusi in this weekend. Then you with the commitments, Jackson Christian, Devin Coleman, Jordan Coleman. So there's going to be a couple of familiar faces there for Fasusi from the DFW area. D-line, Zion Williams, huge visit weekend for Texas with Zion Williams. Obviously, at LSU lean, headed into his July 4th commitment. He was at A&M as well. He's visited TCU. Jamarcus McFarland's a distant relative of his. I still think Texas LSU is where that's going to come from. DJ Sanders on campus this weekend. Visited Michigan, visited A&M last weekend. Will be at Texas this weekend. That's a wild card. Could go any way. He's not a guy that really communicates a lot. So he's a wild card even for college coaches sometimes. Linebacker Madden Faramo is coming in. That's a big one. Notre Dame lean. See what happens there. I think he's a big-time player, one of the best linebackers in the country. Texas does want a 3-linebacker class, by the way. So then defensive back, Kay Phillips, Aiden Anding, Devin Williams. Huge visit weekends. This will conclude the June visits for the Texas Longhorns, over 40 official visitors. So we shall see. We shall see what happens. But again, my prediction right now remains the same. I think Texas will sign a 4th consecutive top 5 level recruiting class. I think that's where now, whether that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I can't say that right now. There's a lot of things that are in play, but I think Texas is trending for a number of guys. But I think the main thing is they're giving themselves some really good shots on goal. They're in the top 2 with a number of their targets, and you're going to win some of those and you'll lose some of those. But I think Texas will sign another top 5 level class. Then the question becomes, after this summer, as we head into the season, what's left as far as how many needs were filled, how many needs are left to be filled. That'll tell you where things go during the season as they get closer to signing day in December. So again, thank you guys. Rick Ambergy, I think tight end's much clearer after this coming weekend. By the way, last thing, I haven't mentioned Michael Terry. Little update there. Had a really good visit to A&M. I think Texas A&M, Nebraska. Again, a guy that may not be in a rush to make a decision. We'll see if that changes. That could go for a little while here. We'll see. These kids move off their timelines. Texas legit shot with Michael Terry. We'll see what happens. He did have a good visit to Texas A&M as expected. So we'll see what happens with Michael Terry. Nebraska's still in it as well. But thank you guys very much for joining us. Joining me on this Monday night special edition of Talkin' Ball Longhorn live stream. Diabell commits to Texas 2026. Obviously, there's already committing the boat, but this 2026 quarterback, Broward County, American Heritage. And by the way, if you watched American Heritage this year, which you will because Diabell's committed, he has 3 receivers that are Power 5 guys on his team. Zamari Sanders ran 20.5 200 as a sophomore. Brandon Bennett ran 10.4 flat as a sophomore in the 100 meters. They had the second fastest 4x100 to Atascocita in the country this year. They beat Duncanville's time. Then they have a third guy that's committed to Miami who may reclass to 25. American Heritage. One thing about Diabell, he's not going to have to adjust to throwing the fast receivers. He plays with the fastest receivers in the country this year at American Heritage, and 3 of those 4 are sophomores. So thank you very much for joining in. We'll be talking more and coffee and football in the morning. You guys have a great night.